In this edition of the Science World, Game On, we are going to read the article, A Spoonful of Plastic. It's found on page 14. It starts on page 14. Go ahead and follow along in your copy of the magazine or read along with the screen. Think about your most recent meal. Maybe it was a bowl of cereal, a sandwich, or sushi. No matter what was on the menu, your food probably contained an ingredient you weren't planning on eating: plastic. Millions of tons of plastic waste ends up in the environment each year. Over time, it crumbles into small pieces called microplastic. These plastic fragments are less than 5 millimeters long, ranging from roughly the length of a grain of rice down to bits so tiny they're invisible to the naked eye. Microplastic has been found nearly everywhere on Earth, including in our food, our drinking water, and our bodies. Scientists recently estimated that people may ingest as much as 5 grams of microplastic, roughly the amount of a credit card, every week. Researchers are studying what happens to plastic in our bodies, as well as its effects on our health. Meanwhile, there are steps we can take to cut down on plastic in our diets and the amount making its way into the environment. Plastic planet. Plastic is all around us. It's used to produce everything from clothing and toys to cars and electronics. This versatile material is made from polymers, large molecules that consist of repeating units. Other chemicals, called additives, give plastic properties like strength, color, transparency, or flexibility. Plastic is durable and inexpensive to produce, but these same characteristics make it a big pollution problem. Unlike wood, paper, or metal, discarded plastic products don't fully biodegrade or naturally break down. Instead, they disintegrate into microplastics. Microplastic also comes from synthetic fabrics like polyester, nylon, and spandex. These lab-made materials shed tiny plastic fibers when people wear or wash them. All those plastic particles may stick around in the environment for hundreds or thousands of years. Wind and water transport these plastic bits all over the world. Scientists have found microplastics just about everywhere they look: beaches, forests, remote mountaintops, caves, Antarctic ice, and even deep-sea trenches. Microplastics can blow or flow into drinking water sources. It can be absorbed by plants, which animals or people might eat, or consumed by animals. When people eat food contaminated with plastic, it enters into our bodies as well. On the menu. Plastic researcher Thava Palasinami works at the University of Newcastle in Australia. He and his colleagues wanted to understand how much plastic people consume on a regular basis. They combined data from 59 studies examining the amount of plastic in several common foods and beverages, including tap and bottled water, fish, shellfish, salt, sugar, and honey. The team combined the study's data with estimates of how much of each item people regularly consume. That brought them to the startling total of up to a credit card a week. We were very surprised by the amount of plastics we're exposed to in our daily lives through food and water, said Palanisamy. A 2019 study by another team looked at a similar mix of foods and beverages to analyze the number of plastic pieces people ingest. The results? The average person swallows around 45,000 microplastic fibers or particles every year from just those few sources. Bottled water stood out as a particularly contaminated, averaging more than 20 times as much microplastic as tap water. Both analyses assessed only a few foods and beverages because those were the only items with enough data available. So these studies didn't give a full picture of all the plastic we eat. You could find plastic in most foods, says David Love, an environmental health researcher at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. For example, microplastic has been detected in fruits, vegetables, and poultry, but the amounts haven't been thoroughly measured yet. Plastic gets personal. This research leads to another big question. What happens to the microplastic that we eat? Larger microplastic probably passes through our digestive system, says Love. New studies have confirmed the presence of microplastic in human poop. Fragments were found in every sample from people in several different countries. That doesn't mean larger microplastic bits are harmless, though. Common plastic additives have been linked to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and reproductive problems in people. If those chemicals leach out as plastic pieces travel through the digestive system, they could pose health risks. Smaller, invisible microplastics presents additional concerns. Unlike bigger bits, these tiny pieces can move into the bloodstream and spread throughout the body, says Love. It's probably not going to make you sick right away, but research suggests long-term exposure can cause problems. Studies in animals show that very small microplastics can disrupt hormones, chemicals that regulate body functions, weaken the body's disease-fighting immune system, and increase cancer risk. Although microplastics' health effects are still being studied, says Love, we've learned enough to know that we shouldn't be eating plastics. Palanisamy, who calculated how much plastic people consume, agrees. Ultimately, we want zero plastics in our diet, he says. Cutting back. Because microplastic is so widespread, it may be impossible to avoid completely, but certain steps could reduce how much we consume. Drinking tap instead of bottled water, whenever possible, is a big one, since bottled water is more contaminated. Also, plastic packaging can transfer microplastic particles and additives to food. Fresh foods or items packaged in glass or paper may be better options. They also cut down on plastic trash, which turns into microplastic. Rejecting plastic packaging is a win-win, says Love. It reduces the plastic you ingest and the amount that ends up in the environment. We're seeing that when we throw something away, there is no away, says Love. The problems with plastics are reaching us here and now. Palanisamy hopes his work will inspire change. The image of possibly consuming up to a credit card's worth of plastic every week is something we want people to have in their minds as they make decisions, he says. The more plastic we buy, the more ends up in our food. And you can see on your own, go through and read some of the sidebars, the images, and the captions to get more information. Now that you have finished with your first read, you're going to go to your teacher, stamp your center's paper, and then you can start your second read.